All right, now we're out at the barn, mining headquarters. Remember, if you look in the other video at the house, I showed you there was 2 number 4s feeding out. I said they go out to the barn directly off the transformer. There's also 2 off of the she shed, the transformer there you just saw. That's why there's so many cables tied into the side of it. They all come in here. And I got 2 little sub panels right here, main grid and she shed. That one's feeding from the main house, and that one's feeding from the she shed. Since they've got so much solar, they make a lot of extra power. And I pull 125 amps in off of each one of them to run all these miners. All right, it was nice and neat. The cables just ran. I got tired of getting up in the evening, coming out here at 9 o'clock at night to turn them off once the batteries got down to a preset charge level. So for my laziness, I just ordered some Wi-Fi relays. And rather than take everything apart and rewire everything, I just spliced them in. That's why they look like they do, but they're under roof, they don't get wet, and nobody comes out here and messes with them, so. But that's what they do, so I can turn them off and on with my phone. They're programmed to start at a specific time in the morning, and they're programmed to shut off at a specific time in the evening in case I forget. But sometimes I need to turn them off earlier, sometimes I need to start them earlier, sometimes I need to turn them off later, depending on how much sun we had. You know, if we've had 4 or 5 cloudy days in a row and we ain't got a lot of extra battery, I'm gonna want to keep them turned off. If it's been like lately where it's just beat down sun every day, you know, you almost can't get them started early enough. Do have them off right now so we can hear to make the video. These are the original 10 air-cooled miners that I bought. I got like 4 refurbished ones, and then I got 4 that were just used, and then I got 2 Watts miners over here. Like these guys. I've had them since day one. You can tell by the amount of dust, and they've given 0 trouble. They just start and run. They're the loudest by far. But they haven't given me any trouble. These, the used ones, I've had to mess with them, couple fans, just little petty stuff, clean them. And the refurbished ones, and these are all S19s. I think these are S19Js and these are S19 Pros, if I remember, but I didn't really know a lot about mining. Just getting started, still don't know a whole lot about mining. Bought those on Amazon. I think I paid like 550 bucks for them. I just wanted something to see if it's actually going to work, you know, so if I could figure out how to provision them, how to get them going to the right place, if they would actually make money, and if the money would actually make it to my bank account in a usable form that would work. And so that's why we set everything up like that to test it, because it took like it took almost 2 months of them mining to get a payout. But it did all work. It did, you know, it went where it was supposed to go. It did what it was supposed to do. So I just keep them here now. I still run them, but I've got these 4 set up to lottery mine. They solo mine. And the other 6 just do the regular pool mining. I figure, you know, I'll throw 400 or 500 terahash at that solo mining and maybe I'll hit a block. But I'm going to convert these to water cooled simply because of the noise. I mean, my neighbor can hear them when they start up. He uses the time that they start up. He knows where he's supposed to be in his day getting ready for work when he hears the miners start. And I mean, fortunately, he's pretty good about it. He doesn't yell at me and complain. But he is nearly a quarter mile away. We can hear them in our house, obviously, when they fire up in the morning. So they are loud. I can only imagine if you had 50 or 100 of these things, it would be mind-numbing. You'd have to do something to quieten them down. But I'm going to water cool them. And somebody asked me why I run 3-phase in one of the original videos. Everything's set up in the mining part to run 3-phase. These are single phase. They're just regular. But all of the water-cooled ones are 3-phase. So that's why I'm set up to run 3-phase. And I chose to go water cooling for several reasons. Loud. The noise, probably the #1 reason. I'm like, after I fired these things up and we heard them, I was like, oh no, that's just not going to be doable in our situation. Live out in the country with the crickets and the frogs and the raccoons and the animals, and you can't hear any of that when these are running. Okay, you can't even hear cars coming down the road when these are running. So I was like, that's not going to be doable. I'll go crazy listening to that whir every day, all day. So I said, we need to cool them alternatively. So I said, okay, water cool. And then every one of the water cooled ones I looked at, they're all 3-phase. Now, I ordered water cooling kits for these. And I'll make videos on that when I get there, tearing them apart and converting them over to water cooling. What I did notice is the water cooling kits don't do anything with the power supply, which is just bolted on the side of it there. But I did see that you can order just a replacement power supply for a water cooled unit, and we could put it on the side and then it would be completely water cooled. Now I don't know how loud the fans are in just the power supply part because I haven't ran one like that yet. So I don't know. I don't imagine they're real loud. But I do want to move them inside and get them out of the open area here. And I don't want fans running in there. I want as quiet as I can get it. And the other reason that I wanted the water cooling is, I have a basically unlimited supply of water that's at 65 degrees. So I can use that to cool them at no additional expense. And water cooling tends to work better than air cooling, especially over the duration of the year. It's consistent. The water temperature fluctuates maybe 3 to 4 degrees, whereas air temperature fluctuates 40, 50 degrees or worse, So that was the other reason. And the last reason was it's easier to control heat if it's in liquid form. My house, when we built my house, I put radiant floor heat in, and my furnace has a hot water coil in it added into the airflow. So I use a boiler to heat that water, pump it through the slab, pump it through the air handler. Okay, and that's how I heat my house, by making hot water. Now, in the past, I had a wood boiler that I built. I think we all saw the video where it fell over when I was moving it out. That was one I'd built probably 15 years ago. And we used that till I got tired of splitting wood. So then I went to a propane type boiler. I use an instant hot boiler, and I can do a little quick video on that. It's pretty easy to see. And I built that with just 2 zones. Built it all on a backer board so you can just stand it up and mount it where you need it. Hook your gas line and your water lines up and you're good to go. But it's a good warm and it works really well, especially on a concrete slab floor. When you get up and the floor is warm, barefooted, it's real nice. And it's even, and it's, again, quiet. You don't hear it running. So the heat coming off of these miners, I did do some experimentation. I got some pictures I'll try to load up. apparently 130 degree water coming out of the miners, they were still running. And the chip temperatures were still below 60 Celsius. They were in the low 50 Celsius, which I think, and y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's okay on the miners. Just going off of, when you look at these air-cooled ones running, the chips are all in the 60s. You know, low 60s, real high 50s. And that's where they run. So I figured as long as the chips are below 55, that it was probably okay. And by running the water, controlling the flow rate, I can recover that heat out of the water through a simple heat exchanger and use that in the boiler to heat my house. And I won't have to use propane at all. I can just use the waste heat from these. 130 is not where you want your boiler. Your boiler should run about 180, 185. But at 130, it will still work. It just runs a little bit longer. But if your heated water is free at that point, then it really doesn't matter if it runs an extra 15 minutes in the cycle. But that was the third reason I went with water cooled. It'd be really difficult to pipe air from here all the way up to the house and tie that into the duct system. It just wouldn't work. But it's easy enough to run some water lines up there and tie in heat exchangers and then just pull the heat from these and run it through the house up there. Once you get your heat in a liquid form, then you can manage it much easier. All right, and so now I guess we'll go in the actual mining room. I'm almost ready to be able to move the miners inside. So let's do that. All right, now, as far as the miners go, what we were talking about out there, I'm trying to get them moved in here. I've put 2 shelves in here. It's kind of cramped. I had the space we had. But anyways, each shelf will hold at least 8 of the water-cooled miners. Okay? Now what I did was I ran a junction box, ran the conduit around the other side, and I have 8 power cords here. Of course, they're all labeled which one is which. So these will plug into the miners. Ran all my Ethernets. Tried to neaten them up as best I can. They go up here into the switch, and the switch ties back to the internet at my house right now via fiber optic cable, which goes through there. And I think we're going to get a dedicated internet service just for the barn. We run Starlink right now, and I'm probably going to get one of those Starlinks just for the barn. That way they can stay separate from the house. But, you know, I measured and cut all my cables. I mounted them up. These are all the power cables, junction box, and these are the 2 manifolds. Sure, everybody's like, look at all the valves. Okay, it's a lot of valves. But red handles are the return water, the hot out of the miners, and the blue ones are the feed water, the cold water. There's 2 manifolds up underneath here that I made. They're 1-inch copper pipe with 1/2-inch saddles on them. They feed back. This is the water leaving, and that's the water going in. Pump spins that direction, goes that way. That's a 45 gallon a minute pump, 3-speed circulator pump. I'm hoping it'll be enough to run 8 of them. It says they need like 2 gallons or so per, 2.5 gallons per machine. So that would be, you know, 20 gallons or so a minute if you just do the math like that. But it doesn't really work like that, because you've got distance and you've got piping restrictions, and you've got, I mean, you're going to lose capacity. But I sized it at twice the size, so hopefully that'll be enough. And it is 3-speed, so if it's just hammering, I can turn it down. And I used PEX in case anything does freeze, because these lines do go outside. As you can see, they go through the wall. This side is going to be glycol. Part of what I'm working on today is outside. I got to mount a reservoir that I can fill with glycol, and it's going to feed into the lines to fill the lines. The other end will be in a heat exchanger in a water bath that's fed from spring water. And it'll just be coils sitting in a case, a lot of water running across them, draining out the other side. Eventually I will try like some shell and tube exchangers and try something that way. I don't know, there's lots of options. That's just what I have currently that I could find around the place, so that's what I'm gonna try it with first. All right, and on both of these manifolds, the way I got it set up is I've got 2 temperature sensors. Okay, and they'll both go on the outgoing water side. The little probes will just clamp down on the red line right here on the metal. And then these you can set for what temperatures you want, and they'll turn an outlet on. I'll probably cut the outlets off and wire directly into them. And I'm gonna make a little mount right there where they'll mount right there, where you can see the temperatures on everything that's happening. They will turn the main water pumps that circulate the spring water. They'll turn those pumps on. So it'll let it run on the glycol loop starting up so everybody can be warm, because I've noticed these things do not like starting. If you pump 60-degree spring water through them and turn the power on, they shut down almost every time. They think it's too cold. So this will let it just recirculate the glycol and keep an eye on the temperature. Then when it starts up and starts mining and making some heat, the temperature will go up on this line. The first stage will come on, turn on the first smaller pump to just get a little bit of water recirculating through there. And I would imagine the temperature will still climb because the one little pump is small. But then once this reaches a preset second temperature, then it'll bring on the real pump, because at that point they'll be warmed up enough they should run without any issues. That's the way it's planned to work. The line that goes to the pumps comes in right there. It's that black line coming through the wall. Right now it's just hooked up to right down here to the one pump. It's just wired into the end of the extension cord. But there's actually 4 dedicated sockets down there at where I pump the spring water through that I'll be able to turn on individually. So stage it in, stage it out. Maybe one day we'll get VFDs and nice pumps, but I want to get it functional first. Once we get it functioning and we know what parameters and we know these are the hard lines, then we can tune in there and make it real nice. These are the feeds going to that junction box right there. Each one's labeled, you know, that's number 8, that's number 7, 6, 5. So when I hook them to the contactors, I'll be able to stage those on and off as well. So if we got more power, I'll fire more of them up. Less power, dial them back. And then the shelf underneath is rinse and repeat. After I get this one up and working, get all the bugs worked out, then I'll do the second shelf, and at least I'll know where I need to be. And that is pretty much the plan. Let's see how it works. All right, I think I've done a little on this before, I don't remember, but basically this is how we're doing it right now until I get the shelf ready and everything. I've got a line coming with spring water feeding up here to a little manifold, basically the same as the one in there. and a water line to each miner going in and then each miner coming out. I only have 4 cords run out here. It's all I can power up with what I got so far. And the internet goes back into the other little building over there. And that's what I was talking about on my phone. I use that little app and I can just turn the pump on and then turn the miners on. Then at the end of the day, when I'm watching my state of charge on my batteries, and as it comes down, because Solar Assistant will tell you, you know, this is depleting you at 2% an hour, 10% an hour. On a house, that really doesn't matter because your loads constantly change, so it fluctuates. But for the mining, it's actually pretty good because the number of miners running doesn't change. So if it says you're at a 10% an hour depletion rate, then that's going to be pretty steady, and you can just calculate in your mind about how much more you're going to be able to run. And then you can go in there and set the time you want them to shut off. Or you can just remind yourself, be like, oh, remember at 8:30 I need to shut them off. Of course, I forget sometimes. But they will just shut off when you run out of power because the inverters will stop. When they get down to a certain level on the batteries, they disconnect. And that's happened a few times. But being able to do it with the little app's pretty nice. And notice all my little lines, when you run even spring water through there, they get all discolored. I do have new lines for everything when I put them on the glycol loop, so we'll get rid of that. And my plan, and y'all can throw in some ideas if you want, because I mean, these are what you see, but I'm sure inside the heat exchanger there's probably buildup as well. So my plan was, I got some superfine blasting media. It's a little more coarse than flour, not as coarse as sugar. And I was going to take one of my little recirculation pumps and just drop it in a 5-gallon bucket and just run it through the machine for a given period of time. Just run it through all of them. Basically hook it up there, hook it up on the supply side, let it pump through all the machines and let that media suck in and cycle through to just clean everything back out again, and then replace the lines before I put them on the glycol loop. And if somebody knows a better way, just leave it in the comments. I'm open to suggestions. But these little guys set out here, it's really awesome. You notice you don't hear nothing. You hear nothing. They're running full bore right now. Okay? You wouldn't takes them a minute to get completely started up. But right now we're pulling 23.6 amps on those machines, and they're just silent. You don't even hear the pump running. If you get real close, you can hear the water moving through them just barely. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and start those air cooled and let you get a listen when they fire up. Because those guys, they ain't even playing. Yeah, I know, Timmer. It beeped, didn't it? And they do put out a real good strong breeze. You can feel them all the way over here. You can feel them at the door of the other side. It's a lot of air movement for some little fans. They're all just ramping up right now. And this just drones like this all the time, as opposed to the nice silent operation of the water-cooled ones. But that's it. They're all up and off to the races now. Hopefully the sun will stay out. Looks like it's gonna be a sunny day and we'll rack a little coin today.